The stars above Prime had always been beautiful. They glowed soft blue and white against the black sky, and the people had watched them for 10,000 years. They built telescopes to see them better. They wrote songs about them. They sent peaceful ships to visit distant worlds and make friends with other species. But tonight, the stars were gone. 12,000 warships blocked them out like a dark cloud covering the sun. Elder stood at the tall window of the crystal chamber and watched the enemy fleet. Her 4 thin arms hung at her sides. Her translucent skin showed the pale blue blood moving slowly through her body. She was afraid. Everyone on her world was afraid. The Oran had come. They were insect creatures, tall and covered in black armor that grew from their own bodies. They had conquered 47 species across the galaxy. They did not make peace. They did not negotiate. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who tried to stop them. And now they wanted Prime. A young aide rushed into the chamber. His name was, and his skin flashed with nervous yellow light. They showed their emotions through their skin, and right now every person on the planet was glowing with fear. Elder said, his voice shaking, "The Oran commander has sent another message." Turned slowly, "Show me." The hologram appeared in the center of the room. The Oran commander was a massive creature with 6 legs and mandibles that clicked together when he spoke. His name was, and he had destroyed 11 worlds. "Little glass people," said, and his soldiers laughed behind him with clicking sounds. "You have 72 hours. Open your cities to us and we will make your deaths quick. Fight us and we will make them slow. There is no third choice." The hologram disappeared. Closed her large dark eyes. They had no military. They had never needed one. For thousands of years, the Galactic Concord had kept peace among the stars. Member species did not attack each other. Wars were a thing of the past. But the Oran did not care about the Concord. They were too strong, and they knew it. "We must call for help," said. "The Concord will send ships." "I have already sent messages," replied. "The Concord says they are discussing the situation. They will form a committee. They will debate options." She let out a long, tired breath. "They will do nothing until we are already dead." The crystal chamber fell silent. Other council members stood nearby, their skin showing the gray color of despair. They had no weapons. They had no warriors. They had only their beautiful cities and their gentle ways, and none of that would stop the Oran. Walk to an old stone panel set into the wall. It had been there for 300 years, and no one had touched it in all that time. Dust covered its surface. Warning symbols marked its edges. Elder, another said, "What are you doing?" "Something forbidden," answered. She pressed her palm against the panel. It lit up with ancient symbols. A screen appeared, showing a communication system that had not been used since before was born. "That is a human beacon," they whispered. "We cannot contact them. The Concord forbade it after the Saul incident. Humans are quarantined. They are too dangerous." "The Oran are dangerous," said. "The humans were just different, and right now different might save us." She remembered the stories from 300 years ago. Humans came from a terrible world called Earth. The gravity was crushing. The air was harsh. The planet was filled with predators, diseases, earthquakes, storms, and countless other things that wanted to kill anything that lived there. But humans survived it all. They grew strong in ways that other species could not understand. When they first made contact with the galaxy, everyone was amazed. These soft-looking creatures with only 2 arms and fragile skin had fought their way to the stars from a world that should have killed them 1,000 times. The Conquered did not know what to do with them. Then came the Saul incident. The details were hidden, classified, buried deep in Conquered archives. All knew was that humans did something that scared the entire galaxy. The Conquered voted to quarantine them. Warning buoys surrounded their home system. No one was allowed to contact them. No one was allowed to visit. For 300 years, the humans had been alone. "They might be dead by now," said quietly. or they might hate us for abandoning them." "Perhaps," agreed, "but I would rather ask monsters for help than watch my people die." She typed a simple message into the ancient beacon, coordinates, a description of the enemy fleet, and 3 words that she hoped humans still understood. "Please help US." She sent the message into the void. The council watched in silence. The Oran ships hung in the sky like hungry predators waiting to strike. 72 hours felt like nothing at all. "What do we do now?" asked. "We wait," said, "and we pray that someone answers." Far away, beyond the warning buoys that marked the edge of forbidden space, the message traveled through the darkness. It passed dead monitoring stations and forgotten relay points. It crossed distances that light took years to travel. And then it reached Saul. The beacon's signal touched a ship that had been floating in the darkness for decades. The ship was old, and its hull covered with blast marks and welded repairs from battles that the galaxy had never seen. Its name was painted on the side in faded letters, UHS Vigilant. Inside the ship, lights flickered on for the first time in 20 years. Computers woke from their long sleep. Screens glowed with the incoming message. "Please help US." The Vigilant sent the message to another ship, and another, and another. Across the Sol system, in hidden bases and secret shipyards, more lights turned on. More engines began to warm up. More soldiers checked their weapons and pulled on their armor. Word spread to Earth, to Mars, to the colonies on the moons of Jupiter. The message reached the United Human Command, where old veterans sat in a dark room and read those 3 simple words. Someone needed help. Someone remembered that humans existed. Someone was desperate enough to call the monsters. Deep in the quarantine system, something was waking up. Something that had waited 300 years for a reason to return to the stars. They had received an SOS. And they were getting ready to answer. Admiral stood on the bridge of the UHS Perseverance and watched Earth turn slowly below her. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from up here. It looked like a place where nothing bad had ever happened. But knew better. She was 67 years old and she had been fighting since she was 16, not against aliens, against other humans. 300 years of quarantine had not made humanity peaceful. Cut off from the galaxy, trapped in their own system, humans had done what they always did when they had no outside enemy. They had turned on each other. The resource wars had lasted 40 years. The ideology conflicts had lasted another 30. The colony rebellions, the Mars uprising, the Jupiter Station massacre, had fought in 3 major wars and countless smaller ones. Every soldier in her fleet had similar stories. Every ship in her command had scars from battles that the galaxy would never know about. The Perseverance itself was proof of human conflict. The dreadnought was 2 kilometers long, and there was not a single part of its hull that had not been repaired at least once. Burn marks from plasma weapons, dents from kinetic impacts, patches welded over holes made by missiles, and the ship was ugly. It was not designed to look impressive. It was designed to survive. And it had survived everything humanity could throw at it. Now, finally, after 3 centuries of being locked away, someone from outside had called. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "the Council of Command is ready for you." Nodded and walked to the holographic display. The faces of 12 military leaders appeared around her. These were the men and women who controlled humanity's entire fleet. They had fought each other in the past. Now they were united under one government, one purpose. General was the oldest. He was 94 years old and had been fighting since before was born. His face was covered with scars, and one of his eyes was a mechanical replacement. He had lost the original in the Battle of Titan 40 years ago. "You have all seen the message," said. His voice was rough and tired. "They are asking for help. The Oran have them surrounded." The Admiral said with a bitter laugh. "They were one of the species that voted to lock us away. Why should we help them?" Many species voted against us, General Solomon replied. Should we ignore all of them? Should we let innocents die because their ancestors made a bad choice? The debate went on for an hour. Some leaders wanted to stay hidden. They said humanity was finally at peace for the first time in centuries. Why risk that peace for aliens who had abandoned them? Others said this was a chance to show the galaxy that humans were more than the monsters they were told to fear, a chance to make allies, a chance to finally leave their prison. Listened but did not speak. She was thinking about the message, 3 simple words, please help us. Someone was scared. Someone was going to die if no one came. Finally, old General raised his hand, and everyone fell silent. I have been fighting for almost 80 years, said. I have killed more people than I can count. I have watched friends die beside me. I have done terrible things in terrible wars. He paused and looked at each face in the hologram. The galaxy called us monsters. They said we were born on a planet that should have killed us. They were not wrong. He stood up slowly. His old bones ached, but his voice was strong. But monsters can choose what they fight for. We can choose to let fear and anger control us, or we can choose to be something more. He pointed at the message still displayed on the screen. Someone is afraid. Someone needs help. We can give that help, not because they deserve it, not because we will get something in return, but because helping people who are afraid is what good people do. And I am tired of being a monster. The vote was taken, 10 in favor, 2 against. Humanity would answer the call. Return to the bridge of the Perseverance. Her crew was already preparing for departure. These men and women had been born in war. They knew nothing else. But as they worked, saw something new in their eyes, not just duty, not just the cold focus of soldiers. She saw hope. How many ships do we have? Asked her first officer. Commander James checked his display. 200 warships ready to fly. Another 50 can be ready in 6 hours, but we would miss the deadline. 200 will be enough. Tell the fleet to prepare for jump. We leave in 1 hour. The hour passed quickly. Across the Sol system, engines came to life. Ships that had fought each other in past wars now flew in perfect formation. The united human fleet gathered near the quarantine boundary, where warning buoys had floated for 3 centuries. No entry, quarantine zone, hostile species. Looked at those words and felt something cold in her chest. Hostile species. That was what the galaxy thought of humans. They were not wrong, but they were not completely right either. Admiral, a sensor officer said, I am detecting conquered monitoring stations ahead. They will see us cross the boundary. Good, said, let them see, let them know that they are coming. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. 200 ships, 50,000 soldiers, the most dangerous military force in human history. This is Admiral. 300 years ago, the galaxy decided we were too dangerous to be free. They locked us away like animals. They forgot about us. Her voice was calm but strong. Today, we remind them that we exist. Today, we show them what we can do, not because we want revenge, not because we want power, but because someone called for help and we are the only ones who answered. She paused and looked out at the stars. We were born on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We survived, we grew strong, and now we choose what that strength is for. She took a deep breath. All ships engage jump drives. Let us go save some people. The fleet jumped as one. Space twisted and tore around them. The quarantine boundary shattered like glass. Across a dozen conquered monitoring stations, alarms screamed. Officers from a dozen species stared at their screens with wide eyes and trembling hands. The readings were impossible. The humans were supposed to be contained. The humans were supposed to be broken after 3 centuries of isolation. Instead, 200 warships flew through the darkness, moving faster than anything the conquered had ever built. And at the front of the fleet, and battered but still strong, the Perseverance led the way. They were loose. And they were angry. Hour 71. 1 hour left until the deadline. Elder sat alone in her chamber and waited to die. No answer had come from the human beacon. No ships had appeared to save them. The Orion fleet still hung in the sky like a dark storm waiting to break. In 1 hour, they would descend on Prime and destroy everything the had built over 10,000 years. Across the planet, her people were saying goodbye to each other. Parents held their children. Lovers embraced one final time. Some prayed to gods they were not sure existed. Others simply sat in silence and watched the stars they would never see again. Had done this to them. She had given them hope with her message, and now that hope was dying. The humans had not come. Perhaps they were dead. Perhaps they did not care. Perhaps they remembered being abandoned and decided to let the galaxy burn. She could not blame them. Far above the planet, Hive Commander watched the countdown on his display. His mandibles clicked with pleasure. He loved this part, the waiting, the fear. He could almost taste the terror rising from the planet below. "Commander," one of his officers said, "the soft creatures have not surrendered." "Of course not," replied. "They are hopping for a miracle they always hope. It makes the conquest." He looked at his fleet, 12,000 ships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, all built for war. The Orion had been fighting and conquering for 500 years. They had never lost. They would not lose today. "Prepare the first wave," ordered. "When the clock reaches 0, we begin the harvest." His soldiers clicked their approval. The harvest. That was what they called it when they took a planet. They would kill the fighters first, then gather the rest as slaves and food. The Orion ate other species. It was their way. The clock counted down. 55 minutes, 50, 45. On Prime closed her eyes and waited. And then space tore open. It was not like normal faster-than-light travel. When conquered ships arrived, they slid into real space gently, like a fish breaking the surface of calm water. This was different. This was violent. Space itself seemed to scream as a hole ripped through reality. 200 ships poured through the wound in space. They were ugly. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Conquered ships were elegant, smooth, built to look beautiful as well as functional. These ships looked like they had been built in a junkyard and repaired 1,000 times. Their hulls were covered with scars, dents, and welded patches. They flew in tight formation, moving together like a pack of wolves. On every ship, painted in letters that had faded but never been removed, were names: Perseverance, Defiance, Unstoppable, Never Again, Remember Earth. Stared at his sensors. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he did not recognize. Later, he would realize it was the beginning of fear. "What are those ships?" he demanded. "They do not match any conquered designs." "Commander," his officer said, voice shaking, "they are broadcasting an identification signal. They are human." Human searched his memory. He knew that name, an old story, a species that had been locked away centuries ago because they were too violent. "That is impossible. The humans are quarantined." "Not anymore." A communication signal cut through all channels. Every ship in the Orion fleet heard it. Every person on Prime heard it. The voice was calm, steady, and completely unafraid. "This is Admiral of the United Human Fleet. We are responding to a distress signal from Prime." In her chamber opened her eyes. Her skin flashed with colors she could not control. The humans had come. After 300 years of silence, they had come. The message continued. "Vessels, hold your positions. Do not engage. We will handle this." A pause. "Orion Dominion, you have 5 minutes to withdraw from this system. All of your ships, all of your soldiers. Leave now and you may leave alive. This is your only warning." For a long moment, no one moved. The Orion fleet hung in space. The human fleet waited. Then began to laugh. It was a terrible sound, clicking and chittering, and his soldiers joined him. The laughter spread through the fleet like a wave. 200 ships, said, still laughing. "They bring 200 ships against 12,000. They are insane." He opened a channel to the human admiral. "Little soft creatures, I do not know how you escaped your cage, but you have made a fatal mistake. My fleet will crush you like insects, and then we will find you and crush it too." Admiral's reply was simple: "You were warned." The Perseverance fired. The main cannon of the human dreadnought was not elegant. It did not shoot beautiful beams of light or carefully controlled energy pulses. It fired a solid tungsten rod the size of a ground vehicle at a fraction of the speed of light. The rod hit a Orion carrier in the center of its hull. The carrier was 3 kilometers long and had survived dozens of battles. The tungsten rod went through it like a knife through paper. The ship broke in half. Explosions rippled along its length. 3,000 Orion died in less than 2 seconds. The battle had begun. Screamed orders. His fleet moved to attack. 12,000 ships against 200. The numbers were so far in his favor that victory should have been certain. But the humans did not fight like the conquered. They did not keep their distance and exchange careful shots. They charged directly into the Orion formation, their ugly ships moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. And they kept firing. Kinetic rounds tore through Orion hulls. Missiles exploded against shields. Human ships took hits that should have destroyed them, and they kept coming. One human destroyer lost half its hull to a Orion cannon. It did not retreat. It did not slow down. It flew straight at the ship that had wounded it and rammed into its bridge. Both ships exploded together. On Prime watched the battle through her orbital sensors. She could not understand what she was seeing. The humans were outnumbered 60-1. They should have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes. Instead, the Orion were dying. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Stood beside her, his skin flashing with awe. "They fight like demons," he said. "They fight like nothing I have ever seen." The battle raged across the sky. Human ships moved through the Orion fleet like wolves through a flock of sheep. They took terrible damage, but they never stopped. They never retreated. They fought like creatures who had forgotten how to surrender. Because they had. 300 years of war against each other had made humanity something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. They were not just soldiers. They were survivors of a planet that tried to kill them and survivors of wars that should have destroyed them completely. The Orion had conquered 47 species, but they had never fought anything like this. Watched his fleet dying and felt something he had never felt before. Real fear. The monsters had come, and they were just getting started. Lieutenant Commander James checked his rifle one more time. The weapon was loaded, charged, and ready. Around him, 30 Marines did the same thing. They were packed into a boarding shuttle that was flying straight toward the Orion flagship. 2 minutes to contact, the pilot announced over the speakers. Looked at his team. These were the best soldiers humanity had. They had trained for years. They had fought in wars that would give most aliens nightmares. They were wearing powered armor that made them stronger, faster, and harder to kill. And they were about to board an enemy ship filled with thousands of insect warriors who were bigger, stronger, and had natural armor built into their bodies. It was going to be a good fight. "Remember your training," said. "The bugs are tough, but they are not used to fighting in close spaces. Their numbers will not help them in the corridors. Stay tight, watch your corners, and do not stop moving." The Marines nodded. They were not afraid. Fear had been trained out of them long ago. 1 minute. Outside the shuttle, the battle continued to rage. Human ships tore through the Orion fleet with brutal efficiency. The aliens had better technology and more ships, but humanity had something they did not understand: experience. 300 years of constant warfare had taught humans things that the galaxy had forgotten. War was not about elegant weapons or superior numbers. War was about will. The side that refused to break would always win. 30 seconds, brace for impact. The shuttle hit the side of the Orion flagship. Its armored nose punched through the hull like a fist through glass. Atmosphere rushed out. Alarms screamed. And then the doors opened and the Marines poured into the enemy ship. The first Iran warrior was waiting for them. It was 3 meters tall, covered in black chitin armor, with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. It screamed and charged at the humans. Shot it 3 times in the head. The creature fell. More came behind it, pouring down the corridor like a wave of black death. The Marines formed a line and opened fire. The sound of gunfire mixed with the clicking screams of the dying Iran. "Push forward," ordered. "We need to reach the bridge." They moved through the ship like a knife cutting through flesh. The corridors were wide enough for the huge insect warriors, but that also meant they were wide enough for the Marines to spread out and use their training. They moved in perfect coordination, covering each other, calling out targets, never stopping. Iran jumped from a side passage and grabbed Private. Its claws scraped against her armor, trying to find a gap. She did not panic. She pulled a knife from her belt and drove it into the creature's eye. It screamed and fell back. She shot it before it hit the ground. "Nice work," said. "Thank you, sir." They kept moving. Back in space, Admiral watched the battle from the bridge of the Perseverance. Her ship had taken 7 direct hits. 2 of her engine pods were damaged. A section of the lower hull had been breached. None of it mattered. The Perseverance was still fighting. "Admiral," her sensor officer reported, "we have destroyed over 3,000 enemy ships, but we have lost 22 of ours." 22 ships, thousands of human lives, felt each loss like a weight on her chest, but she did not let it show. She could not afford to. "Continue the attack," she ordered. "Do not give them time to regroup." The human fleet pressed forward. They had broken the Iran formation in the first hour of battle. Now they were hunting down the scattered ships, destroying them one by one. The aliens tried to fight back, but they were confused and afraid. They had never faced an enemy like this. On his flagship, Hive Commander was screaming orders that no one could follow. His fleet was dying. His soldiers were dying. Everything was falling apart. "How is this happening?" he demanded. "They are just mammals, soft creatures from a single planet. How are they destroying us?" His officers had no answer. They did not understand either. The door to the bridge exploded. Stepped through the smoke, his rifle raised. Behind him, his Marines spread out and took positions around the room. There were 50 Iran officers on the bridge. There were 30 humans. The humans were not worried about the numbers. Turned to face the human commander. The insect was twice height. His claws could cut through steel. His natural armor could stop most weapons. "You think you can defeat me?" clicked. "I am Hive Commander. I have killed thousands with my own claws." Did not respond with words. He simply raised his rifle and shot in the knee. The Hive Commander fell with a scream of pain and surprise. No one had ever wounded him before. No one had ever dared. "You talk too much," said. He turned to his Marines. "Secure the bridge. This ship belongs to us now." The fight was short and brutal. The Iran officers were warriors, but they were not trained for close combat against humans. They relied on their size and strength. The Marines relied on speed, teamwork, and weapons designed to kill things much tougher than insects. In 3 minutes, it was over. Stood over, the Hive Commander was still alive, but he was broken. His legs were shattered. His claws were gone. He looked up at the human with something he had never felt before in his entire life. "Terror." "What are you?" whispered. "We are human," said. "We come from a world where everything tries to kill us. The gravity crushes us. The air burns us. The animals hunt us. The diseases attack us. Even the weather tries to destroy us." He knelt down so his helmet was close to the alien's face. "And we survived all of it. We became strong. We learned to fight. We learned that giving up is not an option." He stood up and looked out the viewport. The battle was ending. Iran's ships were fleeing in every direction. The human fleet was letting some of them go. Your people conquered 47 species, continued. You thought you were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. You were wrong. There was something worse out there, something locked away in a cage for 300 years. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The cage is open now. Across the battlefield, the surviving Oran ships ran for their lives. Of the 12,000 that had come to conquer Prime, fewer than 2,000 would make it home. They would tell stories of what they had seen, stories of ships that would not die, stories of soldiers who fought like demons, stories of the Admiral watched the enemy flee and allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. Her fleet had lost 31 ships. It was a high price, but they had won. She opened a channel to Prime. This is Admiral of the United Human Fleet. The threat has been neutralized. Permission to establish orbit. On the planet below, Elder heard the words and began to cry. The monsters had saved them. They had come to help. She managed to find her voice. Permission granted, Admiral, and thank you. You are welcome, replied. We have a lot to talk about. The human fleet moved into orbit around Prime. There and battered ships hung in the sky like guardian spirits. They were ugly. They were damaged. They were the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The humans had broken quarantine. The humans had destroyed a Oran fleet. The humans were back. On 100 worlds, species that had forgotten about the suddenly remembered why they had been afraid. On 100 more, species that had suffered under Oran rule heard the stories and felt something new, something that felt like hope. The Galactic Concord called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 50 species gathered in the Grand Chamber to discuss what had happened and what to do about it. They argued for 3 days. Some wanted to send fleets to push the humans back into their cage. Others said that was impossible now. The humans had shown what they could do. In the end, they decided to send a delegation to Prime. They would demand that the humans return to Sol and face judgment for breaking the quarantine. Admiral was waiting for them. The meeting took place on an orbital platform above Prime. The conquered delegation arrived in their elegant ships and walked into the conference room with the confidence of beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They stopped when they saw what was waiting for them. Stood at the far end of the room. She was wearing her dress uniform, clean and pressed, with medals covering her chest. Behind her stood 20 Marines in full combat armor. The armor was not clean. It was still stained with Oran blood. The message was clear. Admiral, the lead delegate said. He was a tall being with blue skin and 6 eyes. You have committed a serious crime. The quarantine was established by unanimous vote of the conquered. By breaking it, you have. I know what we did, interrupted. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. We broke your rules. We left the cage you built for us. And we saved a planet full of innocent people while your conquered was still forming committees. This face flushed darker blue. You were quarantined for good reason. The Sol incident was 300 years ago. Took a step forward. The Marines behind her did not move, but somehow they became more threatening. 300 years. That is how long you left us alone. Did you know what happened to us during that time? The delegates looked at each other. None of them answered. We nearly destroyed ourselves, continued. We fought wars that killed billions. We tore our civilization apart and rebuilt it over and over. We suffered in ways you cannot imagine. She paused. And we survived. We grew stronger. We became something new. She walked slowly toward the delegation. Each step was measured and deliberate. You locked us away because you were afraid of what we might do. You were right to be afraid. We are dangerous. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We are predators, warriors, survivors. She stopped directly in front of the delegate. He was taller than her, but somehow she seemed larger. But you forgot something, she said. On our dangerous world, we did not just fight. We also protected our children from the things that wanted to eat them. We built shelters against the storms that wanted to destroy us. We held our dying loved ones and cried for them. The same world that made us violent also made us loyal. The room was silent. No one moved. We are not going back to quarantine, said. We are not going to hide in our cage and wait for permission to exist. We are here now, and we are staying. Then what do you want? They asked. His voice was smaller than before. We want to offer you a choice, said. We can be your enemy. We can fight you. We can show the entire galaxy what happens when go to war. She let those words hang in the air for a moment. Or we can be your ally. We can protect the species that need protection. We can trade with those who want to trade. We can be part of your galaxy instead of its prisoners. She turned and walked back to her Marines. The choice is yours, but know this, we remember who helped us when we were alone, and we remember who left us to rot. She looked back at the delegation. They called for help when no one else would. They took a chance on monsters. We will not forget that. The delegation left to discuss their options. Everyone knew what they would decide. They had no real choice. The humans were too strong to fight and too valuable to ignore. After they were gone, Elder entered the room. She walked slowly, her delicate body trembling slightly. Humans were terrifying up close. They were so solid, so warm, so full of barely controlled energy. But she made herself approach Admiral. "May I speak with you?" she asked. Nodded and dismissed her Marines. They were alone. "I need to understand something," said. 300 years ago we abandoned your people. We voted to lock you away. We called you monsters and pretended you did not exist." Her skin flashed with gray shame. "Why did you come when we called?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "I asked myself the same question," she admitted. "When we received your message, many of my people wanted to ignore it. They said you deserved to suffer for what you did to us. Part of me agreed with them." "Then why did you come?" "Because of something an old man said," smiled slightly at the memory. "He reminded us that we get to choose what we are. The galaxy called us monsters, and they were not entirely wrong. We are capable of terrible violence. We have proven that over and over." She reached out slowly and took his thin hand in her own. She was careful, gentle, aware of how fragile the elder was. "But we are also capable of kindness, of loyalty, of sacrifice for those who need us. Our world did not just make us dangerous. It made us understand that life is precious because it is so hard to keep." She squeezed his hand gently. "Someone was afraid and we could help. That is enough reason." Felt tears forming in her large dark eyes. "We did not deserve your help." "Maybe not," agreed. "But help is not always about what people deserve. Sometimes it is about what we choose to give." They stood together in silence, looking out the window at the stars. The human fleet hung in orbit and battered and beautiful. They were monsters, yes, but they had chosen to be protectors. Below them, Prime was safe. Its crystalline city still stood. Its people were still alive. Because 300 years ago, someone had made a terrible choice, and today, someone else had made a better one. Across the galaxy, news of what had happened continued to spread. Other species heard the stories. They had sent an SOS into the void, and they had answered with warships forged in countless battles. On a dozen worlds, beings who had been conquered by stronger powers looked up at the sky and wondered. On a dozen more, species who had been forgotten by the conquered felt something stir in their hearts. If the monsters would come for them, would they come for others too? The answer came quickly. It came in the form of a simple message, broadcast on frequencies that the entire galaxy could hear. "This is Admiral of the United Human Fleet. To all species who hear this message, you are not alone. If you are in danger, if you need help, call us. We will come." She paused, and when she spoke again, there was warmth in her voice. We were forged by a world that tried to kill us, but we choose what our strength is for, and we choose to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The message ended. The galaxy was silent. And then, from a distant corner of space, from a small world that had been suffering under the rule of cruel masters, a new SOS began to transmit. The heard it. And once again they answered.